Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today, we're excited to be joined by Assemblywoman Mia Bonta. Mia, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
It's been kind of a crazy whirlwind with you. Have you had a moment to really sink in? When did you get into office? Was it like just right at the end of session, right?
I was sworn in early September, 4 days before the session ended. And so I got to vote on, I think, 150 plus bills, which was really exciting. I got to be the 41st vote on a few of those, criminal justice reform related. So I think they needed me.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the members leaving and stuff like that. It must have been kind of interesting coming in last minute. How has it been kind of settling in, kind of building your staff and kind of getting into this new session so far?
It's been really great. I really valued the 4 days that I had because it gave me a really good preview and kind of a window into how it actually looks on the floor there and what happens. And then I got to take some time over the intersession to start to meet with constituents. I think we had something like 150 different meetings over the intersession. And I went on a housing working group tour and got to go to about 13 different cities across the state of California to really look at some housing issues. So between the meetings I've had in the district and being able to see what was going on across the state in terms of housing and homelessness issues, I really felt like when session started this fall, I was able to hit the ground running pretty quickly, which was exciting.
Yeah, I guess you got a lot going on. You came into office, you were there for 4 days, and then you had to move your office to a new office. How are the new digs treating you?
True. So everybody's new digs are just my digs. Like I didn't have a lot of time to get attached to the my old Capitol office. I love the new swing space. I think it's working out really well. It's light
Okay,
and
great.
bright. And my only hope is that we start to be able to get people actually meeting in person, which will happen eventually when everyone feels like it's safe enough.
Yeah, that's kind of the crazy part right now is, usually when you're a new elected, you get to go around, you get to meet people, different events and things like that. We don't have that. So, I was just looking at the assembly roster and I was like, who is that guy? I don't even know that guy. So, a lot of us don't even get to know the members. So I guess, for our listeners who don't know much about you, Mia, can we get a little background of you? As far as I know, you were born in Bronx, New York. Is that right?
That is true. I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I'm a Boricua. So my parents are both Puerto Rican. They grew up in Puerto Rico. I, like many Puerto Ricans, ended up living on the mainland and traveling back and forth. My first 2 years of life were spent actually in Puerto Rico, which is kind of pretty awesome. First language is Spanish, although I did end up losing a lot of the language over time. But essentially, grew up with my mom, who was a part of the Young Lords Party. My parents were socialists and activists and very involved in the civil rights movement, and really taught me how to really focus in, particularly my mother, on women's rights and housing equity, health equity, education, and our dinner tables and conversations were filled with, how can you do better and how can you be of service to our community. And I got the fluke of an education of being able to go to a Quaker school that was an hour and a half from where I mostly
Oh,
grew up
wow.
in the Bronx. I moved 13 times in 16 years, lived in every single borough except for Staten Island. And because I was able to go to this one school that really knew me and cared about what was happening in my life, and not only beyond my academics and my sports, I was able to go on to Yale for undergrad and for to ed school and to law school at Yale eventually as well. Met my partner in life and partner in service along the way, Rob Bonta, when we were uh, technically before freshman year started
Wow.
in at Yale. And I pursued a route really focused on doing right by children and youth and families, and stayed in the nonprofit sector for the majority of our time. Graduated from law school with a 6-week-old in my arms when we moved out to California. And
Wow.
I get to tell her that she's already graduated from law school, so she can skip that step if she wants.
Right.
And since we've been out in California for about 22 years, I know that because she's 22 years old, I've been really focused in on the Bay Area and working in education. I had the privilege of founding a nonprofit based on early learning and literacy and educational technology. Got to play with the tech people a little bit in terms of just founding a tech-oriented organization, and raised capital and did all those things, and then really worked in the nonprofit sector in the Bay Area and throughout over the years. And in 2018, like a lot of other people, was kind of just dealing with the national atmosphere at the time, which was pretty toxic in my estimation. I decided to run for school board in Alameda. And so I sat on the school board, was board president there, and was with our community as we all struggled through COVID and intermittent school closures, and going from jump into distance learning, and all the travails that come with like making that something that could be a positive experience for so many of our kids. And at the same time, I was running a pretty large nonprofit in Oakland that focused on getting kids into college, and saw the drops in the number of students who were first gen and who were Black, Latino, and API, not deciding to go to college because they needed to work full time for their family, or to support their families, or just make a different calculation around investing in themselves. So when my partner ended up vacating the seat for the 18th Assembly District, and I saw what was happening in terms of education and the kind of the state of where we were in terms of the housing that we needed in our district, and just realized that there was still a very long honey-do list that we needed to focus on. I took the bold step of deciding to run, and it was an incredibly contentious assembly race. There were 9 candidates in the race ultimately, and we just duked it out, and I was able to pull together a really amazing coalition of support in the district, with labor being right there with me every single step of the way, and many communities that just hadn't really felt connected to the political process kind of stepping in and getting very involved. And I ended up being able to prevail. And I had the shortest turnaround time from the time I got elected to getting sworn in. And since then it's just been a ride. I just recently got appointed by the speaker to be assistant speaker pro temp. So now I get to hit the gavel and run the floor, which is kind of an exciting.
Oh, really? You're taking the gavel. Exciting.
Yeah.
You have big shoes to fill from DJ Kev Mullen up there.
DJ Kev. Yeah, he's pretty phenomenal at it, and he looks quite spiff when he does it too. So a lot to live up to there.
Yeah. So, in the midst of this, all of a sudden we have redistricting too. How's your district look? And how's it feel? You just ran, you just won, and here you have to run again.
I knew I was going to have to run again, and was looking forward to it. And redistricting did happen. I ended up with for Assembly District 18, which was Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro. With redistricting, I have more of Oakland, which is wonderful. I obviously stay in Alameda with Alameda, which is great because that's where I live. And I lost, unfortunately, San Leandro, which is really hard for me. I've over the years gotten to know San Leandro quite a bit. And I gain the city of Emeryville, which is also exciting. Emeryville happens to be the city that just refused to take no around affordable housing and housing production, and has been doing kind of phenomenal things in that area. And also just has a lot of really great companies that are housed there as well. So I'm excited about getting to know a different part of of the Bay as a hopefully future representative of 8018 in that way. And I'm going to be supporting San Leandro every single step of the way, because the census, makes it hard for cities to make sure that they have a strong voice across, Assembly, Senate, and congressional districts.
Kind of giving your experience on the school board, can you kind of tell us what that was like during COVID? We just saw the recall in the San Francisco school board members, and just seems like so many people are angry at school boards up and down the state. What was it like being on the school board in the middle of COVID-19?
It was really challenging. Like our meeting, well, one thing I would say is that what Zoom did afford us, kind of going to that format, was that a lot more people started to get really engaged in what was happening, not only because their kids were on the line, and schooling schedules were on the line, but because they now had access. So we went from having, a good healthy, couple dozen to at times like 200, 300 people participating in Zoom meetings. And I don't think that people really understood, maybe they did, but when you close down our schools, you close down our economy, you close down, childcare, you close down safety nets for children who were like struggling with food security and safe housing opportunities for the duration of their day. And so that was really kind of what weighed heavily on me most, like the fact that we in America haven't really reconciled the prominence of our school systems. And then when our schools closed, lo and behold, suicide rates went up, food insecurity went up, mental health needs went up considerably. People weren't able to get to work. And so on the one hand, I was thankful that COVID kind of shined such a bright light on our need to invest in education, which has been my life's passion. And on the other hand, it was heartbreaking to see, week after week, our kids struggling with the issues that they were, and being resilient around, stepping into distance learning and seeing parents struggle. It was hard.
Right.
But it did give me the no questions asked in terms of inspiration I needed to pursue an election, because I knew that 40 to 45% of the general fund goes to education, and to be smarter about how we use those funds.
You kind of pointed out, you spent so much time in education, academically in the nonprofit space. Is there something that happened in COVID where it was like, aha, this is finally coming to light? I had this theory, I had this feeling, and now that it's here, it's being shown.
I mean, I think one of the things that we need to just recognize is that we have been underinvesting for far too long in our educational system, in our K-12 system, in our early childcare system as well, and even in our higher ed. So I think recognizing that when things went haywire, everybody started to look to the schools. Like our schools became our public health centers, for goodness sake, right? We were contact tracing, we were vaccinating, we were testing, and
feeding people.
Feeding people, like everything, and that the importance and the centrality of our schools, I think, was the part that hopefully, as parents, struggled to be their own, kids' teachers, certainly like shone a bright light on. Even we have 3 kids. We had 2 school-age kids who had to move to Zoom and distance learning, and working parents, both of us also trying to support our kids in that experience. We felt it too as a family.
Definitely. So, one of the first things that, is always undressed at the beginning of the year is the budget. And kind of, you noted, spending on education is something you want to see. Kind of what did you see in this year's governor's budget? And I guess what more would you like to see put into that budget?
I really appreciated, obviously, there's the governor is going to be spending or proposed spending about $700 million just around literacy and biliteracy, which I think is phenomenal. I really appreciated and was a part of the kind of the move to actually focus our resources on continuing extended paid leave, which I think was a critical move for us as well. And I've really appreciated a lot of the budget items that I've seen in terms of investing and reinvesting, particularly in public safety. And I think it starts to signal for me that the governor is really attending to where we are, which is that we need to make sure that we're addressing kind of law and order and issues related to making people feel safe on the day-to-day, but that the source of that is really around making sure that we're building up our ability to rehabilitate folks, be able to create different opportunities for reentry into into our neighborhoods and our communities. And I'd like to see more in the budget related to reentry supports and services and rehabilitation programs. I was told by an advocacy group that only 1% of the CDCR budget goes towards rehabilitation. And it's an R.
Right, it's the last R.
In the title. It's the last R in the title, and that just floored me. Like, we
Right.
are not setting people up to really be able to commit crimes as they will. Many of those crimes for me are crimes related to poverty. All in all, they're crimes related to, kind of tied into the structural racism that we've all had to endure for far too many years. And the fact that we are putting people in jail and prison and not creating strong pathways out so that people can rejoin their communities and their families, it means that we have a lot of work to do. And I think if we invested differently, we would see far greater returns in lowering of ongoing crime, of people returning back into the system, and in terms of raising up poverty. So that's what I'm hoping Governor attends to.
Yeah, maybe homelessness too. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And a lot of, there have been reinvestments in Project Home Key, which is great. And a lot of our legislators, I'm really excited about Buffy Wicks being the new chair of the Housing Committee, and think that she's going to put her mind towards housing production from a policy perspective, but also homelessness prevention. And I'm glad to do my part with some of the legislative priorities I'm moving forward as well.
Yeah. So you just had your first big deadline here, the bill introduction deadline. How many bills you got, and which ones are your favorites so far?
So my staff, Tomasa, thank you, my chief of staff, and Max Micolonis, my ledge director, my entire team. So we put forward, I think we have 24 bills, which I understand for a first timer is,
In the time of COVID, yes, it's a lot.
In the time of COVID, is a robust package for sure. I think the way that I approached my legislative package was, I wanted to make sure, and I said this a lot on the campaign trail, that we were really focused on implementation and what happens once you pass legislation. So there are two bills, one that's focused on implementation around automatic redaction of cannabis records. So really excited about being able to basically clean up a bill that was put forward by the former assembly member of this district to make sure that that any cannabis sentencing could be automatically removed and expunged from records. I think that allows people, like I said before, to kind of be put on a path to be able to rent an apartment, get a job without having any repercussions for something that is no longer a crime on their record. And there's another closing of a loophole related to SB 1079, Senator Skinner's bill, that really allows us to be able to create different purchasing power for renters by making sure that we're closing a loophole that keeps developer speculators from coming in and presenting themselves as qualified purchasers when they aren't, so that we can have more examples of, in my district, like Moms for Housing, people who are renting homes be able to then purchase their homes and be put on a path towards home ownership. So I'm excited about that. Really excited about my It Takes a Village Act, which will provide some funding and support for place-based cradle to career projects and initiatives that will allow us as a community to consider the whole child every single step of the way, and really building a strong foundation for communities to be able to invest in children from the time they're born to the time that they get their first job that will allow them to thrive. And then very important for my district right now in Oakland, where Oakland is experiencing an unheralded amount of school closures that's causing a lot of, quite frankly, pain for the community. An opportunity in AB 1912 to make sure that the school district has some grace in being able to figure out how to be able to proceed under COVID and coming through this pandemic, for how they're going to right size the district financially. So those are some of my babies, but I've been told, don't ever get too in love with your bills, because they happen along, a lot of things happen along the way. So those are mine, but quite frankly, I think one of the things that I always had a really big kind of question about was how legislators work collaboratively and together in getting things done for people in California. And so looking forward to partnering with Assemblymember Brian on pretty significant criminal justice reform legislation that he's moving forward related to reentering citizens, and I think that that's going to be pretty monumental for a huge portion of our community. And Senator Portantino is looking to reimagine the way that we focus in on funding formula for schools, going from ADA to enrollment, and working with him on that as well. So lots of opportunity to really, I think, work together and in alignment with a lot of what's going on.
You're hearing from a lot of members who are here before COVID that it's kind of hard to talk to the other members. It's hard to kind of go around and kind of be collaborative. I guess, how are you finding it, being new, not maybe knowing as many people, maybe you knew them from before, but how are you finding it, kind of working along and working with the members and staff right now?
I did have the great fortune of having the experience of getting to know a lot of legislators through the 9 to 10 years that my partner in life and partner in service was here. So I think I really am leaning heavily on those initial relationships that I was able to establish. It certainly made that first moment in on the green carpet or walking around the Capitol a lot easier for me as a legislator. I'm not gonna lie about that. And I'm thankful for that time. And I've tried to be very deliberate, making sure to call people up, have conversations, go out to coffee, go out to lunch, dinner, and just take the time that we can to get to know a lot of different folks. And my intention is to try to meet with every legislator I can, and who is willing, because you never know where a good idea will come from, and what kind of support I'll need to lend to them, and hopefully they'll be open to supporting some of my legislation as well.
Yeah. I guess what's it like, being with Rob right now? You guys are like this ultimate power couple. I'm sure you guys were always considered a power couple, but now, you guys are going to parades, you're doing all these events in the community. Kind of, how's that feeling right now?
We do a really good job at keeping each other very humble. I think I do a much better job at keeping Rob humble than we really love just kind of being out and about. We have very different styles, and it's fun to kind of be in spaces together where we're helping out community in different ways. And I think he's making sure to stop being the assembly person and giving me space to be able to, be in this role fully. And he's taken to being the attorney general in very graceful ways that I'm really excited to see him kind of blossom and be in that role for the state. And we have a lot of fun doing it. Like, it's just, our kids are probably sick of hearing all the political talk and all that. But for the most part, he loves what he does. I love what I do. I feel incredibly like blessed and honored to be able to be in this role and to make a difference in a different way. And I think that keeps us kind of excited to go out and tackle the next day.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time and joining us and sharing some of your stories and insights. Loved hearing them, and would love to have you on later in the year to see how your first session went. See how many of those bills you loved, were able to make it to Gavin's desk.
Thanks. We'll see how I do. I would love to debrief with you after it's all said and done. Thanks so much for the time.
Definitely. We'll love watching you on the floor sessions.
Great. Take care.
All right.